Hello everyone. In this video, we are going to use ChatGPT to solve hardest Python problems from LeetCode. So this is what we are going to do. You must have heard about ChatGPT. Go to Google, search on ChatGPT, openai.com, and try ChatGPT. Using this, we are going to solve the most hardest problems on LeetCode. So what is LeetCode? Go to LeetCode and register yourself, and you would see under the problems section list of all the questions that needed to be solved or that could be solved using Python. So I'm going to select Python, and you can filter on difficulty status. So this is LeetCode. You can select any problem and use this ChatGPT to solve a problem here. So we are going to use the top 10 hardest questions from LeetCode, and we are going to use ChatGPT to solve it. I'm going to show you how to do it. You can do it on your own and learn and be prepared for the interview on Python. So let's get started. Let's select any hard, right? So longest valid parentheses or Sudoku solver. Let's use trapping river. So I'm going to click on trapping river example, trapping rainwater, and you are going to be seeing this screen. So given an n non-negative integers representing an elevation map, compute how much water it can trap after raining, all right? So based on the elevation level, you need to find out how much water level it can trap. You don't have to learn anything, right? Use ChatGPT. So I'm gonna go to ChatGPT and I'm gonna type write Python coding interview questions and answers with LeetCode, and then in here, put your question. Trapping rainwater examples of Python with detailed comments on the code. So you can say with detailed comments on the code and just run it. It's gonna start generating answers and it'll tell you how to solve it. So it's gonna take some time, but it is gonna write questions. It writes solutions to your questions, and then you can start learning. So I'm gonna show you how you can learn like top 10 hard Python questions from LeetCode here using ChatGPT. So I'm going to pause the video. It's going to take some time to execute. You would see that the solution is complete. It uses two arrays, left max, right max, and it's giving you detailed instructions. So you have to match the instructions to the solution, right? So let it run, and then we are going to walk through the top 10 Python interview coding answers and questions. So there you go. It stops, then you have to rerun and stuff like that. So what I've done is I've created a Colab notebook, the link of which is in the description section video below, and I have taken these hard Python questions. Trapping rainwater, cheapest flights with K-stops, valid parentheses, wildcard matching, longest valid parentheses, partition to k equals sum, longest increasing subsequence, reverse integers, two sum, and first missing positive. So let's get started with one by one. Because we have generated trapping rainwater, I'm going to copy this or maybe copy code here, go back to LeetCode, remove all of this, paste it, and say submit. This is what you have to do on LeetCode. Great platform for you to make sure that you are prepared for Python interview questions, right? Coding questions. Look at this. The solution beats 43.66%, which is good, right? I mean, you got the solution at least. So let's do this. I'm going to walk you through the top 10 questions. So trapping rainwater, I'm going to explain you each answers, but then I'm not going to execute all of these one by one on LeetCode. You can do it by yourselves. And by the way, all 10 solutions are generated by the ChatGPT. So I'm just going to explain you how it works. So feel free to pause the video, watch this video multiple times till the very end to look at answers to all the questions. Given n non-negative integers representing an elevation map where the width of each bar is 1, compute how much water it is able to trap after raining. The function takes one input, a list of integers, and returns an integer. This is what you need to do. Here is the solution. It uses two arrays, left max and right max, to store the maximum height from the left and right respectively. Now, in here, it first initializes left max as height 0, and then loops through the height array and updates left max as max height here. So this is the first loop. So what I'm going to do is, just for the easy understanding, I'm going to paste it over here, the comments, so that you know. So when you look at the video description section of the video, you would see these comments are updated for every section. All right. And then I'm going to paste this on the second loop. So this one is for the right max. There you go. Now you will understand this code very easily. So this one is for the left max. This one is for the right max. It loops through the height array in the reverse order and updates the right max height and the right max I plus 1. Here it was left max I plus 1. And then it loops through the height array for each element, adds minimum left max and right max, and minus the height to trapped water. So if you remember, the trapped water question was like this. So this is left, this is right. You need to find out what is the height max. This is what this problem is doing. So copy this, paste it as is into the LEET code and run with it. Let's look at the next question. The cheapest flight with K-stops. So what you could do is you can copy this name, and that's why I have put this as this, and go to Google and search for LEETCODE flight with K-stops. You would see this. That is your problem. So this is your cheapest K flight problems, and you can paste your solution on the right. So if I go here, I look at it, it says there are n cities connected by m flights. And we can read this over here. There are n cities connected by some number of flights. You are given an array flight where flight from, to, and price indicates that there are flights from a city and to city with a price. So it's an array of from, to, and price. You're also given three integers, source, destination, and k. Return the cheapest price from the source and destination. So if this is the source, this is the destination, what is the cheapest flight with almost k stops? If no such route exists, then return -1. That is what you got to do in this question. All right. So let's look at the solution. The solution uses sorry, my bad, right? The solution uses this algorithm with a min heap to find the cheapest price. It creates a heap with a starting node and the maximum number of stops. It also creates a dictionary to store the edges and their cost. All right. Next, it then loops through the heap and pops the node with the minimum cost. So this is the statement that it does that. It loops through the heap and pops node with the minimum cost. If the node is the destination, it returns the cost. If the number of stops is greater than 0, here, it loops through the edges of the current node, adds the cost, and pushes this to the updated number of stops to the heap. So this is the solution. Please copy paste, put it in LEETCODE, and then try that, right? And see what is the score. All right, next, valid parentheses. So what you need to do is, given a string containing just characters these, determine if the input string is valid. If the input string is valid, that means open brackets must be closed by the same type of brackets. This is the solution. So if you want to again look for it, go to Google, search for, or you can search on LeetCode to valid parentheses, and you would get this problem, right? So this problem, this is the solution. Again, copy this and paste it in LeetCode and run this. So class solution, you define a function is valid, it takes string, and this is Boolean, right? Now, stack, this is the mapping. So you create a mapping of open and close brackets. If the character is a closing bracket, then you pop this in the stack, else hash. If the popped element matches to the corresponding opening bracket, then you put this return false. Else append the character, because you want to stack it, right? So stack it, and as soon as you have a closing bracket, remove it from the stack. In the end, if the stack is empty, we have a valid expression. If the stack is not empty, like in cases like this, then it's not a valid stack. Good, easy. All right, next, let's move to the next question. Wildcard matching, the same thing. Given an input string and a pattern, implement wildcard pattern matching with support for question. Matches any single character. If this matches any single character, matches any sequence, this one matches any sequence characters, including the empty sequence, the matching should be covered. So if you want to read more on wild matching, again, go to LeetCode, all examples from LeetCode. There you go. So given an input of this, question mark matches any single character, star marks matches any sequence of characters, including empty sequence. How do you write this? Right? The answer is here. The solution uses dynamic programming to solve the problem. It uses 2D DP array where DP is I and J. So you are using a 2D array representing if the first character I is input S, the first J characters are pattern P match. All right. So this is solution is match. It takes in these two strings. This is the length. It initializes the DP array with all the elements as false. So you start with all the elements as false except 0, 0, which is obviously going to be true, right? Because you're going to be matching the pattern. So you initialize it. Then loops through the pattern. You loop through the pattern P here and check for any characters and set the corresponding matrix as true. If DP of 0 and J minus 1 is true. After that, it loops through the input string S. And then for each character, it checks the current character pattern P. So you can see that this is the first loop that loops through each character on the range 1 and n minus 1, where n is the length of P. In this, you do a similar logic. Just go through it. It's not going to take any time, but this is for the star and this is for the character match. Next is longest valid parentheses. So given a string containing just the characters this and this, find the length of longest valid formed parentheses sum string. So this is the solution, very simple. Uses a stack to keep track of the position of the last unmatched bracket. It starts with stack containing -1, which represents a virtual character before the first character of the input string. For each character in the input string, if this, it pushes its index to the stack. If it is right, it pops the top of the stack, right? So you are gonna just count if it's a complete longest valid parentheses or not. So this is how it does it. It starts with a stack -1, and then with the length of stack, it just loops through it. If there is a match, then it appends, and if it is not a match, then it's pop. And then finally, it tells you what's the answer. So it tells you the longest valid parentheses. Just again, copy this, paste it on LeetCode. partition to k equals some subset. Feel free to pause the video step by step and understand each of these ones, right? This is a solution. Partition k equals some subsets. Given an array of integers, nums, and a positive integer k, find whether it's possible to divide this array into k non-empty subsets. The function takes two inputs. So let's look at this, right? Partition, it gives like in LeetCode, there is a very detailed, so LeetCode, there you go. So it says here, given an integer array and integer k, return true if it is possible to divide this array into k non-empty subsets whose sums are equal. If you look at it, this one, you can divide it into 4 subsets. That means 5, 1 plus 4, 2 plus 3 is 5, 2 plus 3 is 5 with equal sums, right? So given an array, you can create subsets in order so that the sum is matching, right? This is what we need to do. So come back in here. This is what it is. The solution uses depth first search to solve the problem. It first checks if the sum of the input list is divisible by k. If not, then it returns false. And again, all of these questions are generated, or answers are generated by ChatGPT. So you look at it, I have run all of these questions through ChatGPT, and it explains all the questions here and with answers, right? So all of these are generated by ChatGPT. So I'm assuming that you should be able to use ChatGPT by yourself for any other questions. All right, let's look at this one again. So partition to k equals subsets. Can partition k subsets? This is the input. There is another function DFS, which means starts, k, target, and subsum. Now what it does is, this particular function is called by here. Now what it does is, if sum of nums, the numbers of the array, which is here, is divisible by k, that means if it is not equal to 0, then returns, right? Because it's not valid to start with. It's not going to work anytime. And then you pass through this subset and make sure that this function works. So initializes the target as sum of the input list divided by k. Then the function DFS takes 4 inputs. So this is the function DFS, right? So I'm going to paste this comment over here. The function DFS takes 4 inputs: the start, the k, index of the search, target, and an array of subsum. It starts with the search from the start index, that means k, and if checks if k equals 1. If it is, then it returns true, right? And then it does, it calls this function again. So it's like a sub self call function. It's a complicated thing, and that is why it is one of the hardest problems. Look at it. Okay, longest increasing subsequence. Let's look at an example in the LeetCode. So I go in here and make a copy of this collab. So LeetCode longest increasing subsequence. There you go. So given an integer array nums, return the length of the longest strictly increasing subsequence. That means if this is an array of nums, then the longest increasing, that means if this is the first element, this is decreasing. So it's not a good one, right? So 2, 5 is not a good one, right? So now you have 2, 3, 7, and 101, because after that it's 18. So therefore, the length is 4, because 2, 3, 7, because 5 is higher than 3, therefore 5 is eliminated. So 2, 3, 7, 101 is the highest length. In this one, it is 0, 1, then 2, 3. Make sense? It's all sevens, therefore 1. So these are the checking criteria as well. Let's look at it. So this is longest increasing subsequence strictly. So class solution, length of list, self, nums, it's a list and int is integer. If not, it's not a number, then return 0. Find out the length of n. Now, this is the first one multiplied by n. Now for I in range n, so it's creating two different, loops, right? And then it checks if nums of I is greater than nums of j, then do this, else return max. And then finally you return max once this loop is completed. So this is the solution, and look through it. Reverse integer. Given a 32-bit signed integer, let's look at in this LeetCode, right? Because they have good examples there too. So LeetCode, search for it, reverse integer. You would see reverse integer here. Look at that. Given a signed 32-bit integer x, I'm gonna increase the size here for you to look at it. So given a 32-bit size integer, return x with digits reversed. So 1 to 3 is 3 to 1, minus 1 to 3 is minus 3 to 1. Okay. So let's look at the code. It should be simple, right? It may not be the hardest problem. All right. So you have a solution, reverse. If check for the negative input, if it is negative, then sign, right? Convert the input integer to a string. So convert that into a string like this, and then convert it into back into integer. And there you go, the reverse. So check if reverse integer is within 32-bit signed integer, right? Because if it is more than 32-bit, then it won't work. And there you reverse it from here. Simple, it's a very simple, I guess, but check it out. Now two sums. Let's look at two sum in LeetCode, right? So LeetCode, two sum. Given an array of integers, an integer target, return the indices of two numbers such that they add up to the target. So you may assume that each input will have exactly one solution. Okay. So target is 9. So how do you make 9? 2 plus 7. The output is 0 and 1 because this is the position 0, this is position 1. Here, target is 6. So the output will be, this is 0, this is 1 and 2, the spaces, indices. So 2 plus 4 is 6. This is what you need to do, right? So go in here. I think there is a 3-sum question as well. So this is your function. Create a dictionary to store the value of index of each element. Value to index equal to null. Let's start with initialize. Now then, check if the complement of the current element is already in the dictionary. If the complement is value to index, then return. Else, this one. Try this in LeetCode, right? So let's do this, right? So just copy, go in here and paste it and say submit. And you can see that result. It's that simple, right? So beat 62.54. Good, right? All right. So let's look at the last one. First missing positive. Let's look at LeetCode. First missing positive, right? And so given and it's a hard one, right? So given an unsorted array, return the smallest missing positive integer. So if you look at it, this is an array 1, 2. What is the smallest missing? 3, because the numbers are in range 1 or 2 in the array. In 3, 4, minus 1, 1, the output is 2. This is what we need to find. It's kind of a interesting question, right? So let's look at the answer. So this is the answer. First missing positive. N is length of numbers for I in range, and please read all the comments, right? While 0 is less than this and this, there are two conditions. That means the current element is not in its correct position, and it is greater than 0 and less than n, and it is not equal to the element in the correct position. And this is find the first element that is not in the correct position and return. There you go. So you can copy this as well. Let's run it. You could have done that for each and every code, right? So there you go. I submit it. And I think it's gonna beat 36.5. You can improve it much better. But please understand, LeetCode, I mean, the ChatGPT also generates these logics from the GitHub and all the other massive input, 32 billion parameters that GPT uses. So again, with that said, you will have a link to these questions in the video description section below. Again, thank you for watching.